podcast is a quest for well-being, a quest for a meaningful life through the exploration of fundamental truth. Enlightening ideas, insights on physical, mental, and spiritual health. The inspiration is love. The aspiration is to awaken new ways of thinking that can lead us to a new way of being well. Welcome to Body, Mind, and Soul Healing Conversations.
This episode is about accelerated self-healing and its fundamental principles. The mind, the body, and the spirit are mutually interactive and interdependent. All three are essential to optimize self-healing, life quality, and spiritual development. Self-healing is an innate, intelligent, and self-organizing process. The self-healing process targets a limited number of causal factors to address at any given time in order to optimize function and longevity. Priorities shift when new issues are encountered, when a change in activity puts demands on different pathways, and when healing processes are completed. The lack of access to materials, energy, or information essential to the completion of a prioritized healing action appear as a distortion or loss of coherence in the body field, biofield. Distortions in the body field tend to remain over time in the absence of essential material, energetic, and informational support. Chronic distortions in the body field become fossilized over time as structural alterations and degenerative changes. Introduction of remedies carrying essential matter, energy, or information as a stimulus to the body field produces a measurable response of increased coherence in the body field. Self-healing is accelerated when the body field is coherent, indicating that the essential remedies are present. All systems are working together efficiently on the same team rather than divided into separate working groups. Typically, 85% of accelerated self-healing is the active cascading response to adding the presence of essential stimuli. Ingesting natural remedies that carry essential matter, energy, and information typically activates the coherence and acceleration response for up to 24 hours from the time of ingestion, similar to the bowel transit time. Accelerated self-healing typically completes the prioritized healing activity within about a month with essential daily support and other related topics. Valeria interviews Dr. Glenn Suarez, a best-selling author with a dozen health books in print for accelerated self-healing. Dr. Glenn Suarez is the wizard of wellness. He is also the developer of the clinical theory of everything. Dr. Glenn Suarez graduated magna cum laude with honors in environmental earth sciences and chemistry from Dartmouth College. He received his doctorate at the top of his class in vision science with honors in optics as well as leadership, being inducted into both Beta Sigma Kappa and the Gold Key Honors Societies. He interned at the State University of New York in Manhattan, where he trained at the largest outpatient vision clinic in the world. He served as editor, vice president, and president of the American Optometric Student Association, serving 4,000 international student doctor members. He is the author of over 50 professional papers, books, and software programs. His first professional office was in Tokyo, Japan. For the last 30 years, Dr. Glenn Suarez has focused on developing his system of accelerated self-healing. The process starts with a biocommunication called biofield analysis, which he developed out of a variety of German electrodiagnostic techniques. His healing ministry now spans the globe, with healing clients on every inhabited continent. The methods optimized the innate healing potential of your body, independent of particular symptoms or diagnosis. He has helped thousands of people get off drugs and avoid surgery. Dr. Glenn Suarez is also available as a guest speaker and as a consultant. In his energy research, he rediscovered the frequency known in ancient China and Tibet as the dominant harmonic frequency of nature. Here is the interview with Dr. Glenn Suarez.
In your own words, who is Dr. Glenn Suarez?
I'm a healer, I would say, and I recognize that we're all our own healers. And so through my own healing experience over the years, which has been extensive, I've been able to integrate and implement many methods that help me in order to help my patients and now my clients, coaching clients.
Yeah, that sounds really good to me. And I have lots of questions here for you to explore that. But before we talk about the fundamental principles for accelerated self-healing, I have a few warm-up questions. The first one is a very general one. What is life to you?
Life to me is the life of the soul, the spirit, which is the seat of our consciousness. I believe that we're here as spiritual beings in a biological body experience in order to learn and grow and develop. We're in a material world that allows us to take things linearly, sequentially, make mistakes, learn from them, make corrections, to grow and develop.
Oh, it's simply the human experience, right? Yeah, I like that. What do you think is the opposite of life, Dr. Glenn?
I think the opposite of life is not a thing. It's like the opposite of light is shadow or darkness, which is not a thing in itself. So the opposite of life is just a lack of recognition and awareness and appreciation for the beauty of life. Suffering and death, we could see as opposed to life, but actually suffering is really how we grow. When we face challenges in life and move through them, even if we don't totally overcome those challenges, the flip side of that challenge is the spiritual growth that comes from it. Like, let's say a person who loses their vision and develops their hearing so they can actually hear things that we don't hear. And death is really actually a rebirth. When the baby comes out from the womb, they're dying to that one life that's where they can only see as far as they can touch, and there's limited colors. There's only red light filtering through the blood in the womb. And they come out into a much larger world where we can see the stars. And so I see death as our transition into the life that follows this, which in that progression is to our transcendent life, into a timeless life, an eternal life.
What is well-being to you?
Well-being is our potential. We have certain degrees of function that gives us well-being, whether it's our body function, ability to move, our mind, our ability to think and be aware and appreciate. The spirit has an ability to serve that function of consciousness and the ability to grow and develop. And I believe the spirit actually has what I think of as a physical form. It's not a material form in the sense of a hard substance that's impenetrable, but it's an immaterial substance that's made of, has a mineral substrate to it that's in its nature, it carries consciousness and is transcendent of dimensions like time and space. And that's how our mind is able to, recall the past and actually be present in the past, or receive a vision of the future that's actually veridical or a true perception.
So you explained the spirit. A lot of people, they sort of connect the spirit to the mind, but in a way you have different definitions or different ways of explaining these phenomena. So what is the body? What is the mind? What is the spirit, which you already talked about a bit, energy and information?
Right. So we think of the body as a material object, right? It's a biological entity that's made out of, we learn in school, it has solid components like bones or connective tissue, sinews. It has liquids like the blood or the lymph, and it has gaseous elements. We certainly need oxygen. We breathe out carbon dioxide, and those are in solution in the liquids in the body. But with modern science, we now really understand that those three states of matter are just three out of multiple, at least 5, that I consider essential in terms of understanding how the body and the mind and the spirit all work together in this life. That we have to add an understanding of plasma, which the name in physics for plasma, like plasma, if you look at a light bulb, that's a glow mode plasma, or a fire, a flame, that's a glow mode plasma, or lightning, or it's a spark of electricity, that's a discharge of plasma, an arc mode, and that's really a different state of matter, but it's all considered plasma as a state of matter. And there's also dark mode plasma, which is happening in the body, like the name plasma for that cosmic sense of plasma in physics was named after the biological plasma of the plasma in our blood, or the cytoplasm, the plasma in the cell. And what is a plasma? It's just a substance. It can be kind of gaseous or liquid like in the body, but it's electrical. It has electrically charged components, ions, that are able to carry electrical charge, and therefore they move and operate according to the laws of electromagnetism rather than the laws of liquids or gases, which are more kind of mechanical and very much more simple. And the reason they named the plasma they saw in the sky with the aurora borealis after the plasma in the body is that it moves the same. It moves according to those laws of electromagnetism. It moves in channels called Birkeland currents. It's how blood moves in blood vessels, or nerve current moves in our nerves, and how direct current electricity moves in our meridians, the electrical circuits of the connective tissue of the body. And then the fifth state of matter that's really a breakthrough is a condensate called a Bose-Einstein condensate, named after 2 physicists who first proposed the idea. They could envision it, Bose from India and Einstein, of course, everyone knows. And in the 1990s, there was research done where the other physicists finally in the laboratory were able to document and prove that, yes, that state of a condensate does exist. It's very different. It acts like a quantum, and we know the quantum world of a single atom or a subatomic particle is a very strange world. It doesn't operate the way material substance does. It operates more like fields and waves and thoughts, and it can move through. One can move through the other, like the spirit, the ghost in the body can move in a body. And we can have an outer body experience, and the spirit come back into the body, and then we're seeing through the biological eyes. But when people have outer body experiences, they're not seeing through the biological eyes. The brain is flatlined, the heart's not pumping, the biological body is clinically dead, it's not operating, and yet a person will come back from that experience having seen their body from an outside the body perspective. They may have heard what people were saying. And they report actually that the vision isn't limited the way our biological vision is limited to a 180-degree field of view. They actually see all the way around themselves in a complete sphere of vision. So the spirit, the soul, has this innate capacity for consciousness, for vision, for hearing. It's a fascinating subject to me as a vision scientist, and working with healing and seeing how important the consciousness and the spirit are to our potential to heal. When we're working with people blinding eye diseases and they overcome those in conditions that were considered to be irreversible, the textbooks say it's irreversible, like macular degeneration is considered the most common cause of irreversible blindness in modern cultures. And yet we've had people who are already legally blind who regained functional vision. So we know that so much is possible with the right attitude and then the right action. That we're basically nature deficient in our culture, and that's why it's the condition of modern industrial culture that we're so removed from the earthly realm that our biological bodysuit is designed for, of plants and nutrients and natural energies, of the Schumann field of the earth, and we need to at least learn how to restore those energies and information and material substances from herbs and from nature that our body's designed to heal in response to.
Is the mind and the spirit sort of the same thing?
They're really among the most difficult words and concepts to pin down because of their nature. in that realm of consciousness and spirit and soul and mind, even emotions. They're so fluid. They're the nature of condensates that I believe is the holy grail, the cup that holds the consciousness. It's super fluid. It's super conducting. It can bilocate. It moves at the speed of thought. When we think about, for another illustration that really helped me understand it, is when they study remote viewing and remote healing, where a trained subject is thinking about some distant place or an animal or person that needs healing. And they can actually measure quantum energetic changes in that remote field that's not within their biological vision, but within the mind's eye vision. So when they're seeing that healing and they can measure healing taking place, they can also measure a change in the energy field at the same time. So the vision of the mind extends beyond our line of sight. We can, have people separated by thousands of miles, and like in prayer healing studies, people that are being prayed for that heal better than the control subjects, they don't know they're in the group that's being prayed for. The people praying for them, all they have usually is a photograph of the person, not their name or their condition or their location. So information, the substrate, what the physicists realize, many of them, is that consciousness really is the underlying reality of the material nature of what we see, feel, hear, touch.
So, in a way, only consciousness exists.
In a way, yes, but certainly in a very real way, all these other things do exist as well. But in their core, at their most fundamental source, the source is consciousness. They're real, just like our thoughts are real, and they have real effects. If I make an act of the will, I can move my hand. That has a real effect on the physical manifestation in the world.
So going back to my warm-up questions, what is the meaning of freedom to you?
The meaning of freedom to me is the capacity to have choice. And that there's a wonderful quote that I came across that I have on the wall here to remind me. It's from hundreds of years ago, from St. Thomas Aquinas, and how he had this thought at that time. It still amazes me. It's the power of nutrition enables one to exercise the senses. And from sensory experience, the intellect gains concepts, and so the will is freed to choose. So to me, that's the purpose of healing. Why do we want to heal the eyes? Well, because vision is our dominant sense as human beings, and it gives us an information base about the world in which we can move freely and choose to, turn right or left or avoid, danger or approach something that's of value.
At this time, what do you think is the world's greatest need? And what is your vision for a new reality?
To me, the greatest need is to recognize that we are designed, we are made as, and our purpose is as spiritual beings to be self-governing, self-regulating. We have worldly, earthly government, man's laws and governance. It really exists for the case where we're not governing ourselves. If you're governing yourself, you're not harming anyone, then that's when we need to have that freedom to be able to live our lives, to learn and grow and develop, and even to make mistakes, make errors. There's a saying I love that the only real mistakes are the ones we haven't learned from yet. Unfortunately, we can also learn from others' mistakes and avoid having to go through them ourselves.
I agree.
So, that's the real benefit. But my vision would be to move toward a world where our social governance or regulation of each other is nonviolent. Right now, a world system of laws that comes from originally, I guess, as far back as we know, the law of Hammurabi, which governed war and governed commerce, the law of the sea, which is where we try to extract value from each other. We're really trying to extract the life force, the life energy from other beings. And see us more and more come to a point of realizing that that's really not to our benefit. Our benefit, that there's actually an unlimited amount of value, because value is created by the human heart. And so can reach a source of value, we can create value, and there's abundance in that we can give to others. And there's another favorite saying that the full payment for any gift is gratitude. You appreciate the gift. That's, in commerce, there's this idea that there's an exchange, that a good or service is exchanged for money. And really, money is a token of appreciation. So if we can kind of get to where we separate those, and we can give our tokens of appreciation of whatever sort we like, or just actually receiving of the gift and appreciating that gift is the full payment. When you give a gift to someone, if they don't appreciate it, really there was no value in the gift. Darn, they didn't use that. They didn't appreciate it. They didn't get value out of it. But if they, somebody, wow, that was so great. Whether we charge money or we gave out of service, out of love, the real value is that we're helping each other.
Speaking of gratitude and non-violence and kindness, what is love to you?
Love, I envision as a wormhole from the heart to something, which can be in the truth, in reality, in the truth. It can be in fiction. We have the capacity to attach our hearts, our will, our desire to anything that the mind can conjure. And so to the degree that we attach our hearts to the highest possible order of things, which would be the source, if we love the divine source, of which we are a living part, a cell in God's body is a beautiful way to say it, then we're part of that. And our hearts, that's our navigation as beings. I mean, our eyes and our vision are our navigation in the material, spatial, temporal world. But in the spiritual world, the greater world of which we're a part, we really navigate with the heart. Like there's studies on where they show people slides, and if it's a beautiful slide of a scenery or something, there's no reaction. The body doesn't react to it. There's no stress response. But if they show a slide of a fire, a snake, or an injured person, something that shows danger, there'll be this autonomic, sympathetic, adrenal kind of stress response, the fight or flight or fright response. And the interesting thing that they noticed about that in these studies is that the response came before the slide. So there's a retro-causal, a reverse time causality, where the future is able to communicate to the past self, the future self, to the past self, like a warning before it would seem possible on a conventional level of thinking. And they tweaked the studies to the point where they could find out that the body's response actually happened even before the computer ran the program with a random number generation to decide which slide was going to be shown. So it literally is proven to be a retrocausal effect, cause and effect. And they looked at where does that response show up? Well, it shows up in the brain, but even before that, it shows up in the heart. So our heart, by its nature, we know from Oriental medicine, the heart it's the emperor. It's the seat, the home of the spirit, the Shen. That's the spirit we see in people's eyes. That develops, into wisdom in the wood element of the eyes and the liver. So the heart is something that we all could do more to stay centered in. For in our body, we can go into our minds, and the brain is kind of can be a harsh master, like fire. But when the heart's charged, it keeps everyone in consideration.
What is your understanding and idea of peace, Dr. Glenn?
Peace, the best word I can think of as a scientist would be coherence. And it's the energy pattern that we see in heart-centered emotions like love, that they're coherent, that they are sustainable indefinitely, infinitely across time, that they're communicated infinitely across space. So they're transcendent. So peace is something that transcends the separation, the division, the us versus them, or conflict. The material world can conflict. One sword can clash against another, but if we could think of the equivalent in the spirit, let's say like a thought, a sword, an idea that that can cut and divide and separate, maybe good from bad, to judge the world in the sense of that we have to, in terms of our navigation, that we have to say, well, is that safe to bring my children over there, with that group of people, or do I want to avoid that and stay at home? So the tools of the spirit can intersect like two ideas. If you and I have a different idea, a different definition of a word or a concept, we can share those in the same space without clashing. Where the physical world, we might come to fisticuffs. Like, you can't be in the same space I am. I'm sitting in that chair. You can't sit there at the same time.
I love that too. I never heard it that way. It makes so much sense to me. That peace, or this idea of peace, transcends differences in separation. So I'm almost at the end of my warm-up questions. I have another one here about God. What, where, and who is God to you?
To me, God is in us, but more than that, we're in God. That we are cells in God's body. God at source of all that is, all we know is the universe. That's a creation of God, comes from that source through God's intention, God's consciousness, God's gift to us. The idea of creation, of the Big Bang, I think of as the big gift.
I like that.
Whether that was time or beyond time doesn't particularly matter to me, and we can look at theories and debate those. But everything comes from one source. It's a universe. It's a oneness. The background energy of space is unified across the entire universe. Every electron is identical in its function, its consciousness, its memory of how to be, how to act. Every magnesium atom is completely identical in function, and yet each one, like each of us as human beings, has the uniqueness of its history. So it has a memory in the information space of its exact history, and maybe this magnesium atom is becoming part of me, but it's been part of other human beings as well. It's been in the ocean. It's been, in rocks. It's been the magnesium that makes tree leaves green. So there's that unity and diversity. Unity there's the uniqueness of each of us. That's really a key aspect of understanding God. That God isn't about everything being the same. It's like if we think of the opposite of the spiritual idea of a Satan, which there's the idea of the small s Satan that we each have that opposes that unity of divine energy within us. That's really the energy of sameness, of wanting to have, if anything, Satan wants to have an army that's all dressed in uniforms and all marching in lockstep and all using the same gun. That's wonderful. If you want to destroy life, we have, very efficient ways of destroying life, and that. But God's army is such unique. The saints are completely unique individuals. Everyone is a different blossom of the possibility of personality, and has a unique history, unique challenges that led to the blossoming of their spirit.
Yeah, and that's wonderful, isn't it? All these colors. Yeah. And do you see a difference between spirituality and religion?
Well, certainly. It's always been a challenge for me as an individual to be religious in a very regular way, and I'm not opposed to it. And I really appreciate traditions from many cultures. Have their wisdom that we can learn from. But just as a person, it's hard for me to establish routines and keep them. I'm very exploratory. I'm always changing how I do things, and I'm learning from that. But I do believe that there's spirituality to be found in both of those kinds of paths of sort of the free spirit who's seeking truth. And, what is God? God is love. God is beauty. God is light. There's all these different sayings, and they're all different facets of that one gem of our source. So, it's like saying there's maybe many paths in one mountain. I don't think all paths are the same. I think they're all unique and different. And we have the gift of free will, of choice, to navigate and find our way and to learn our own lessons along the way.
How did you become a wizard of wellness? That's a great title.
A lot of experience and of years growing my beard, I guess, is
Yeah, that helps. That concept, right?
Yeah, I've studied many different techniques, and I synthesize out of that my own thinking and approach. I'm always asking questions. Like, I love how you ask the big questions. I really like asking the big questions, like, well, what is time? If there's these studies show if there's saints who have visions of the future that come true, if there's prophecy, if there's retrocausality in human perception and psychological studies now, what is time? It's not an arrow. Oh, it's not a linear arrow. It's at least it's a two-way arrow, if nothing else. Yeah. So lots of contemplation, I would say, and lots of years and hours and minutes and moments spent as a medical empath, tuning into remote clients or local clients, measuring, studying, learning how to ask the body what's happening in the healing process, and listening for the answers rather than staying in the mind and thinking, well, I know the diagnosis, I figured that out, and now here's the protocol, here's the cookbook for treating that. I was trained in Western medicine, but I could never be contained by it.
So what is the inspiration and intention to do the work you do, Dr. Glenn?
Well, I've always been, I grew up in a family that was oriented to alternative medicine. This is back in the 1950s, when that wasn't a thing so much, at least it was classmates. Like, when I'd look at them and say, why are you eating white bread? Don't you know that'll kill you? And they're like, look, I have two heads, or I'm, man from Mars or something.
Yeah.
But little tiny kid holding my mom's hand, my hand's up in the air to reach hers, and we're going around to like 4 or 5 different grocery stores to find one that would have this stuff that she called yogurt. And most of the stock boys were like, looked at us like we were from another planet and like, never heard of that. And finally found one store that had yogurt. Of course, it was plain yogurt, which is actually what we wanted. And that's all there, much was back then, as a starter, our own. Or, I was raised on goat's milk because I was allergic to cow's milk, because our family doctor was holistic and knew that that's what was going on. So go to this farm and get the goat's milk.
That's cute. What is self-healing, and what promotes self-healing?
Well, we know if you cut your finger, it heals itself. We can put a Band-Aid on it. We could take, something for the pain. It's not going to make it heal. It's the body itself that heals. So it's acknowledging the fact that healing is self-healing. All healing is self-healing. But that there's things that slow it down and things that speed it up. If I have that cut and maybe I think a Band-Aid is going to help, and I leave it on there and it's kind of moist underneath, and maybe it gets infected because of that too much moisture. It needed to scab and dry and heal itself. But maybe it knew even a better way. Or maybe the Band-Aid helped to keep dirt out so it didn't get infected. So there's our actions can accelerate that healing, especially by as I was saying, as an empath, I can think about a person. I have their photograph. I know their history, their symptoms. So I'm thinking about them. My body will take on the information patterns of their body at that time, and I can use that to read my body's response to different signals of, for example, tissue samples from different organs in the body. If I get a stress response to liver tissue, healthy liver tissue, I know that their liver is stressed. And then if that stress response clears, becomes coherent again, goes into a peaceful state again with a certain nutrient or herb, then I know that that's therapeutic, it's beneficial, it's something their body can use. So it's a matter of I think of Mother Teresa and a quote from her. She was asked by a reporter about prayer because was famously a very prayerful person, and I said, "Well, what is it like to pray to God? What's the conversation like?" And she said, "Well, mostly I listen." I thought that's really interesting to contemplate. It's an interesting, not the answer that you expect, but it certainly makes sense. It's like, yeah, And prayer isn't all about, hey, God, do this for me. It's like, and then her follow-up question was, well, and what does God say? And she says, mostly he listens.
That's great.
So certain coherence, a certain peace, a certain reciprocity or symmetry or mirroring on there.
So speaking of prayer, is meditation part of the healing process when you are working with clients or patients?
It is, and not typically in a religious sense of a certain form. To me, meditation personally is to live meditatively. If I'm at our farm here and I'm working with the rocks and the trees and the soil, to me it's I love it because it's a meditative activity, and my mind is freed to contemplate these other questions I have about healing and the nature of the soul or whatever. So and in the personal experience of the healing process, absolutely. If I have pain, for example, I find the most healing way of relating to that pain is meditation, is to move into the pain, to actually encompass and surround the pain with a meditative, loving, healing intention and awareness. As opposed to the other choices is to divide ourselves from the pain, to try to shrink away from the pain. It makes our spirit smaller, and we don't, I think, get the same growth from it. We don't get the same healing from it. When our mind goes to the pain and some people visualize surrounding it with white light, whatever the specific process might be, sending the mind, the consciousness, the awareness to sense that, to fill that space that surrounds the point of pain, which is understood in Oriental medicine as a blockage of energy flow. In my model, my understanding, we're sending spirit minerals there, these condensates of consciousness. The soul, the spirit body, is actually through wormholes of space-time from the mind, from the brain area, sending this connectivity to that place, and literally bridging that blockage and allowing the energy to flow through the consciousness, and therefore flowing around the area that's physically, mechanically, biologically, chemically blocked. And that helps to not only to reduce the pain, but to speed the healing.
Would be a wonderful thing if most of us understood it and practiced. It's all there is in a way, just listening. Meditative process, that's what it does. We listen. Is there any conditions that you find that's necessary to take those conventional medicines, those drugs? Would you say that for some conditions, it might be too late to use some of your methods?
I would say it's never too late to use the methods we're using. I think that is first, the Hippocratic Oath is to first do no harm, and we do things that do no harm in the realm of stimulating the body to heal, supporting to heal with nutrients and herbs, or even gently substituting. If the adrenal hormones are low, we'll use some over-the-counter 7-keto or other safe low levels of actual hormones. We're never opposed to a coaching client, a consulting client, making their own choices of how to navigate the medical system. There's certainly people who are trying their darndest to avoid drugs and surgery, and I completely understand and align with that. And we also work with many who are already maybe on eye drops for glaucoma. We don't tell them to go off of those drops. That is between them and the prescribing physician. We don't want to get involved in the the man's law system of threats and coercion. And yet we recognize that they exist. So, we're here to fulfill all the laws, but especially the laws, the divine laws, the laws of nature, of our nature, that who knows? We don't know. We can never know. Technically in science, we can never know that something cannot be healed. And I always ask the question: what is success? We worked with a man who came from a very rough life in Boston, very heavy smoker and drinker. He was dying of cancer, metastatic cancer. He was in all kinds of pain when he arrived here on the island to pass with his daughter and son-in-law. And he was already on morphine, still in pain. And the doctors said, you have 3 months to live. So he came to Hawaii to die. And his family here put him on juice fasting, a Gerson type program, very intensive healing support, not necessarily with the idea that, of course we always hope that things will heal and you have a longer life, but to do what we can to support the body to heal itself. Well, what they were able to do, and we were also supporting with natural remedies and the coaching and consulting that we do. And in 3 months that he was supposedly going to be dead, he was actually off morphine and pain-free. He was still dying of cancer, but he was having quality of life where he was pain-free, conscious, not on morphine, and with family. And the actual day, he lived for about 6 months total. And the day that he passed, he was sentient enough that he knew that was the day. And he asked, stay home with him. Don't please, stay with me. Don't go to work today. And at about noon, he passed in a conscious state. Now, we don't really know from life and from any science we can do here what the effects of passing consciously might do for us in that transition, but I'm feeling it's a good thing. So to me, that's a success. Our life is a success if we've lived it as full as we can, get as much joy and love in it as we can.
Talk to me a bit more about what you do exactly. What's the process? You can be from distance. They don't need to go to Hawaii to see you. What are the cases that you can help?
Well, we help people. We work with the whole person, occasionally animals, but mostly people. And animals are fun, and children are fun because they're simpler and they respond so quickly. But many of the people that we're working with, because of the books I've written on blinding eye diseases and natural therapies, are referred, with glaucoma or cataracts or macular degeneration, dry eye, other blinding eye diseases, and but also, they're whole people, and they may have issues with their circulation, their digestion, their nerve function, immunity, etc. And all of those are critical support systems for the eyes to be healthy. So I see no way of healing the eyes is isolation from the body.
Everything's connected, yeah.
Connected. And so we wind up with also referrals from other clients or even from the eye doctors that refer to us of their challenging patients who may not even have a specific eye disease, but they have some kind of a health mystery or challenge that they haven't found a resolution to. And we see a lot of improvement in most cases. There's some cases, maybe we don't have the answers yet either, but we're always looking. A lot of the inspiration comes from, people with unique challenges that come to us, and dive into the research of natural medicine of, hey, what's supposed to help with this? And we formulate our own products because we found there just aren't products on the market that have all of the possible solutions in one capsule or one we don't use tablets, but liquids sometimes, or powders that you mix into it. And my theory on that, why we have so many ingredients in our products, none of those ingredients, by the way, are additives, excipients, colorings, artificial colorings or flavors or anything like that might do harm. But all herbal and nutritional, all the highest potency and quality that we can get. By having, say, 30 different things in a formula for, let's say, for gastroesophageal reflux, GERD, that was inspired by a client that was having that issue. And so I did the research and I said, well, look, there's a few main ingredients that are supposed to really work well, but there's no product that has them both of those pathways covered in one product. And then there's all these other things that help a bit or should help, or that are natural and non-toxic. So we put them all together. So it might be a little lower dose than another product on one of those key ingredients. But the fact that there's some in there, in my research, I find that 85% of the healing response that the body makes to the presence of a medicine or remedy that's therapeutic, that's healing, 85% is just to its presence at all. Just like in homeopathy, having a little bit, having the signal, the information, that energetic signal there, it's like, oh, now the body's tuned to that station and it's going to dance to that tune,
Right. I actually have reflux and I'm interested now in your products. What is the website, Dr. Glenn? I will post it, but please mention as well.
Yeah, we have a new website called remedymatch.com that makes it easy to find. Like, let's say if you go there and you type in the search box in the upper right, type in GERD and search, and it'll pull up any remedies that, I've keyed those keywords into, or if it's in the title or if it's in the ingredients. So you can search for ingredients that way too.
I take a lot of supplements, natural ones. And do you have protein too? Like pumpkin protein powder?
That's a big project that I'm working on right now. I've identified a handful of different proteins that we do have available. And my intention is we'll be also working on a complete fasting support with complete nutrition, vitamins and minerals, along with the protein. We use as a medicine this way, we mostly use pre-digested, enzymatically digested proteins. So the amino acids are all able to be absorbed without the digestive tract having to do any work, whether it's because you're fasting and you want it to be healing itself, because it's not working and we need amino acids in order to make those enzymes and also to make cellular enzymes. So one of the big problems we see with fasting is where if it's not a protein-sparing fast, if there's no protein, or if there's protein but the person can't digest it properly, then we can actually deplete our body proteins, whether it's muscle mass, the person can lose muscle, and that's not good. Say they're trying to lose weight, so they fast, but now they're losing muscle mass, but that has a higher metabolism than the fat that they want to lose. Or if it's a person with cellular metabolism issues, and we don't want to lose any of those cellular enzymes, because those are the little amplifiers that get the work of the cell done efficiently.
So you're working on that.
We have pre-digested pea protein, pre-digested whey protein, pre-digested white fish protein, which is an old Norwegian medicine called Secure. And then I do have in a formulation, Secure Synergy, where we've added other synergistic ingredients to increase the absorption. That's one that's known in the natural health field to help people who can't gain weight, people who are underweight. That's a real problem solver.
Sounds really good. I'll take a look at it and I'll have the website here too. Thank you so much. And I have a few more questions for you. Before that, would you like to add anything or read a passage from one of your books?
I was just going to say, so the remedymatch.com site is great for exploring the remedies that we've created out of all this, 38 years of experience. And then if somebody needs coaching and consulting, there's links from there, but there's a different site where we have our application for consulting, and that's at tryunity.net. That's TRY. There's the in Star Wars there is no try, but worth trying is unity.
It's true. That's great.
And then /application is the form to get in touch with us, share a little bit about yourself, and we can offer people a free discovery session where we'll explore with them, what might be the right approach, see if it's something that feels right to them.
Yeah, it sounds really good. I think I have a client for you already. My final questions. What is another word for healing?
Another word for healing is spiritual growth. And another definition, another perspective of healing is time travel. Because when we're healing, we're going into the past to correct something that went wrong. Even if it's like an old thing, how does cancer start? Well, it starts with injury to tissues. So we have scar tissue that's an area where there's a lack of proper flow of circulation, flow of energy. It's not as strong as the original tissue, but more the flow of energy and information and fluids is the key. And so it's a backwater. And now every time we're exposed to toxins, if we can't eliminate them all, they get stuck in those backwaters. And so that's how it takes time for that to develop. But if we're really going to heal the reason that cancer is growing in that spot, we're going to want to heal the scar. And another way of looking at cancer is it's a type of scar, kind of like a keloid is an overgrown scar, but it's a toxic.
Wow. But it's toxic, right? That's interesting. I never heard it that way.
There was an analysis of cancer studies done where they found that the people who actually lived the longest had no radiation, chemotherapy, or surgery. Their body was self-healing. And it doesn't, that we can't do something more or some therapy, but to me it means that all three of those conventional therapies are known carcinogens. So, and there's now studies on breast cancer where they documented why, so many people, once they've been through medical treatment, the cancer will come back and grow faster and not respond to treatment, is because it really tends to kill the weaker cells, the ones that are just sort of the benign tumor cells are more like a scar tissue, but it actually increases the number of cancer stem cells, which are the ones that are more virulent, that grow back faster. And so it increased those 36-fold in the study that they did on breast cancer. And it's, I'm sure, very similar with other types of cancer.
Yeah, there's so much that we needed to learn. And I absolutely agree with the alternative medicine as a prevention, actually, because the healing might be too late in the case of advanced stages of cancer or other conditions. So they need the help of both, perhaps, conventional and alternative. But I love the idea of prevention.
And absolutely having input from both perspectives, to me, is so critical, because the beauty of Western medicine is the ability to see inside the body, to see them, to measure the chemical levels, to visualize the structure of the body, and to get that perspective is, and to use that for monitoring the condition and selectively, on an individual basis according to your needs and what makes sense to you and what you're drawn to. If we realize, as I was saying earlier, that our spirit actually, our future self. It knows what path. So to use our intuition, if your intuition is, I like this doctor, I trust this surgeon, I'm going to go with that, there's a good reason to trust our own intuitions.
And my last question, what are 3 things about life you know for sure as of today?
Oh, my. Well, I guess that there's more to it than is obvious. Like the materialist view that all there is what we can see and measure, that I know for sure that there's more than what we can measure and touch and see. The consciousness, we can't measure the consciousness, but we can experience it. And as a vision scientist, we learn how to indirectly measure it through psychophysics, through the person's own experience. So, and that was really the first thing when I went into practice after finishing school with my father and practicing for a couple of years in Japan. And I came back to New York and worked with my dad. And he said, well, you've completed your degree, you've gotten your license. That means you're ready to start learning. You've learned enough that the state says, you can practice now. But everything else you'll learn from your patients. So listen to them. And it's so true. So much, each person has their experience. Well, what health issues have you faced, and what helped you? If something helped a person, to me, an anecdote is data. Okay, interesting, good to know. Put that in the list of possibilities.
I love that word too, learning possibilities, right?
And I know that the purpose of life is to learn how to love. and that it's easier to love some people and some things than others. And so that's a good place to practice, to start.
Thank you so much for your presence and your deep wisdom and your healing scientific knowledge. Thank you so much. Most of all, thank you for your presence. Thank you, Dr. Glenn.
Sharing with you.
Where can we find more information about you, your work, your books, products, services, and future projects?
Right. We've got about a dozen websites, but to start, a great place is to look at some of the products that we've created and healing devices, and at remedymatch.com, just like the two words, like it sounds, remedymatch.com. And then TryUnity, Try, and the word unity.net is, I've got a lot of writings on there. So you can, put in search queries at the bottom right of the page. And if you want to speak directly with me and explore what we might be able to do for you, go to the application page, tryunity.net/application.
Wonderful. Thank you so much again, and we'll talk soon. Bye for now, Dr. Glenn.
Aloha.
Bye.
Thank you for listening. To learn more about Dr. Glenn Suarez, please visit his website, remedymatch.com.
To learn more about this podcast, please visit fitforjoy.org/podcast. I want to thank the Patreon members, Lawrence McGrath, Mark Basden, Terry Clayton, and Aidan Vickrock. Thank you again for listening, and bye for now.